So good evening, everyone. I know from looking around the room that I don't need to do this, but I'm going to do it for protocol's sake anyway. I am Gordon Rankin. I am the conference minister for the New Hampshire Conference and a member at First Parish in Dover. And I am excited to welcome you to this, our first connecting session of those associated with our 2023 annual meeting. Tonight, our conversation is going to focus on our mission, income, and spending plan for the New Hampshire Conference. We will unpack that all for you and let you ask your questions. A couple of pieces of Zoom etiquette stuff for us to cover before we begin. This could, before we get too far into things, be a fairly full room. We had about 30 some odd folks sign up. I don't expect to see all of those, but we may see more. So I would encourage you to please keep yourselves muted, except for when you are making a comment or asking a question. Because this is an annual meeting associated event, ask us to follow the standing rules for annual meeting. And if you are to speak, to please introduce yourself by your name and your church's name. Want to remind you that this session, as is all our connecting sessions, is being recorded, which you just heard a moment ago. And this recording will get posted onto YouTube. I would encourage you to be thoughtful in what you say to make sure that it's appropriate for something that's going to be that public. So for example, tonight we are talking about finances. This, however, is not the appropriate place to start spouting out bank account numbers. So I thought I'd get a little chuckle, eventually got there. Want to let you know that Thaddeus will be providing tech support for us. He dropped his phone number into the chat. So find that if you need tech support help. In just a moment, once I throw things to our presenters, I'm going to put a link to the overall mission, income, and spending plan in the chat, so you can access that online. Linda's going to show you a whole bunch of slides, so I'd say pay attention to those while she walks you through all that detail, and then you will have the full document to look at as a resource as we're asking questions. And with that, I am going to introduce Linda Lannon, who is a member of our conference board of directors and the chair of our budget committee, and she's going to lead us through this conversation about our mission, income, and spending plan.
Great, thank you, Gordon. And thank you all for coming. So I'm going to see if I can bring up the slides now so that you can see them. And are you able to see that? Yes, okay. So welcome to our budget presentation for the mission, income, and income spending plan. Here's what we will be doing. Let me see if this is going to work. No. There we go. This is our hearing. These, unless we make some adjustments after tonight, these will be the slides that will be shown at the annual meeting. What we will be doing tonight at the hearing. First, I think Gordon already went through the welcome and introductions. We're going to talk about the background, how we got to this budget. We'll do a brief review of the income and expenses. We'll talk about the bottom line, summarize it all, take any questions and answers, and then wrap it up for tonight. The background is right now, the revenue and expenses seem to be leveling out post-pandemic. We had some trouble with that for the last few years, but we seem to be doing better this year. The General Synod was held live in Indianapolis, which was great. I wasn't able to go, but it's wonderful that it was held live. People tell me it was a great time, so I'm glad. Camp was again on site at Horton Center this year, and enrollment was up about 20% with no COVID closures, which is great. The capital projects update are the database technology upgrade is still in process, and the sprinkler system upgrade has been completed. The key aspects of this mission and income spending plan, the board is presenting a balanced budget, which we're very happy to do that. I'm thrilled to be here to say it. The expenses for 2023 have been pretty much as we have expected. And we have once again given our various ministries the latitude to tell us what they need and meet them where they need it. In general, they again have been frugal with their budgets, and they have not spent all of their allocated 2023 budgets. We're not done, but it doesn't look like they're going to spend all of them. Not because we've held them back, but they've been frugal with it, and we appreciate that. On the revenue side, the key considerations are our church's wider mission revenue projection has been pretty consistent with the last few years. The fellowship dues, if you remember, we increased them at the annual meeting last year from $12 per member to $15 per member. The rental income from the cell tower at Horton Center and the office rental has been relatively consistent, each increased by roughly $2,000. Investment income has been relatively consistent. That has increased by about $12,000. The Friends Appeal, there's two of them, April and November, increased by almost $6,000. Here is the revenue slide. There are 4 columns presented: the 2022 actuals, which we didn't have at this time last year, the 2023 that we adopted, and the 2023 that we project. Now that's a tough number to come to, but this is what we think we're going to end up with the 2023 budget. And then on the far right is the 2024 proposed budget for revenue that is expected. I'm going to give you a minute or two to look that over. And if you have any questions on this slide, should they raise their hand virtually, Gordon?
Sorry, I forgot I muted myself. Yeah, probably raising your hands at this point is the best way for us to notice you.
Yeah.
Your virtual reaction hand, not your actual hand.
Your real hand.
Because we only see a couple of you. Or you can type a message in the chat. We would also notice that.
That's true. Okay for me to move on now? I'm not seeing any questions. The key considerations for the expenses side of the budget is that we reduced our national OCWM contribution from 35% to 25%. This was done at last year's annual meeting in order to help us create a balanced budget. So the retention ratio for us is 75%. The 2022 contribution to the national setting was $179,708. Our estimated contribution for 2023, we think, is going to be $117,250. As always, if we end up with a surplus, 50% of that surplus is given to the national setting. The ministry teams provided us with bottom-up estimated budgets. Staffing expenses, the other large piece of our budget, has seen an overall increase of about 2.5%, and that would be 3% COLA for staff. And the expected increase in staff health and dental insurance is up by 3 to 4%. Since fewer staff are using full benefits this year and going forward, the net effect is lower benefit expenses compared to 2023. Key considerations of the budget, again, I couldn't fit it all on one slide. There are some notable reductions in expenses. The lighting upgrade has been completed. We're saving money every month on that. And the phone and internet systems have been upgraded, resulting in a cost reduction for those as well. The board continues to try to find ways to reduce our energy consumption costs and to be good stewards of the earth by reducing our fossil fuel usage. And then here is the next chart, the expenses by the ministry teams. Again, 2022 actuals, 2023 adopted, 2023 projected as best we know, and 2024 proposed. There's a line of credit. You might notice that the finance ministry from projected 2023 has changed considerably to 2024. We moved the line of credit from the finance ministry to the general and administrative budget. So it's still in the budget. It's just not on this chart here. And the Mission Insight software expense that had been on local church support ministry has also been moved to the general and administrative budget. That's why theirs has gone down considerably. Their budget has gone down considerably. Again, just move, just not on this slide, but somewhere else in the budget. Any questions on that? So here are the overall expenses and the bottom line. Same for categories as was presented before. I like the 0 on the bottom right corner of this slide. That's the great one where we are presenting with a balanced budget. Does anyone have any questions, comments? Oh, I think I wanted to mention too, the Kathy, go ahead.
Can you explain the change in the Justice and Witness Ministries? Maybe you said it and I just missed it. It looked like it went up a lot,
Right.
which is fine with me. I just like to understand where it comes from.
Justice and Witness. So I think that if you look at the 2023 adopted, it was 17,000 and the 2024 proposed is 18,000. So what they asked for each time has been fairly consistent. What they actually spent has been considerably lower. There's a couple of mission groups within that, the Justice and Witness Ministry that do very well with fundraising. So that has made a big dent in how much the conference has had to pay out for them. Good noticing though. Yeah. And also I meant to also reflect that the wider church relations ministry budget has gone up considerably. And that's because we are trying to spread out the expenses for Zimbabwe trips and for Synod instead of getting kind of nailed on the years that those will happen. So we're trying to budget them now and save for those large expenses. Did that answer your question, Kathy, first of all?
Yes.
Okay. I will go back to slide number. The bottom line. Claudia.
Oh,
Oh, you're muted again.
okay, yes, thank you.
Sure.
I was curious about the, there's a big difference in the actuals for additional support for the Horton Center, and then what's adopted for 2023, and then what is projected to be the actual for 2023, and then what's projected for 2024. And I'm just not familiar with what that means, so.
So for the Horton Center designated revenue, is that what you're looking at? And then 2023 is 78,000. And then what we adopted for 2022 is 78,000. The 2023 adopted is 96. The projected is 83, and then 2024 is 96. Actually, Gordon, are you able to field that question? I'm not sure I can do a good job with that one.
I think what Claudia is noticing is the difference in additional support. And the fact
Oh,
that
okay.
the adopted
Oh, okay.
numbers and the proposed numbers are low. Is that accurate, Claudia?
Yes, thank
Yeah.
you.
Okay, sorry. Then the line right before that.
So
And
what happens there? The additional support is really the amount that is required out of the general budget to support Horton Center and keep them running. So in bad years like the ones where we had a COVID shutdown like 2022, revenue was down for Horton Center, so we had to pitch in more to balance the revenue and expenses from Horton Center. This year, Horton Center has been doing well. Attendance is up, revenue is up, and so we're not contributing as much, and that's a good thing from the general budget to the Horton Center. Does that help?
Thank you. Yes, that's wonderful. Thank you very much.
Okay.
other questions or comments? And if there are none, I think I'm going to stop the share so we can see each other, and then I'll open it up again. I can always go back to these slides. Oh, I see one in the chat. Please remind us what the debt service is.
You want me to tackle that, Linda?
Yes. Oh, yes. I think that's the one you can definitely answer better than I can.
So one of the realities of being the type of institution we are is that our revenue does not all come in consistently. About 40% of our revenue actually comes in December and the first couple weeks of January. So part of what that means is we have dead spots in our revenue intake. So we have worked out with Bank of New Hampshire, who does the basic part of our banking, that we can take a line of credit at those times when revenues are lean to then work at paying that off when we get that revenue in at the end of the year. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to make payroll and such. So that debt service is on the interest on that line of credit. That allows us to keep our income consistent in order to be able to pay expenses that are consistent even when our revenue is sporadic. Sharon?
Is any of that servicing the loans for the work that we had to do in the conference with the sprinklers, and we took out what, Cornerstone loan, or I can't remember the name of the loans. Do any of those have debt service?
Yes, sorry, I wasn't actually even looking at the figure as I was doing it, but for the figure to be that high, yeah, that would include the payments that we are paying back to the Cornerstone Fund for the 30 some odd $1,000 we took for them, and including the loan that we took from ourselves from the revolving loan fund. So it's all three of servicing all three of those debt pieces. It's the interest on the line of credit, it's the payments back towards the cornerstone for the sprinkler system loan and the payments back to ourselves for the revolving loan fund for the sprinkler system. Thank you for that clarification.
Through the request and I got a link, but it doesn't show me there, but it counts me, but it doesn't show me. Right, I guess. Not much of an increase.
Kathy?
Thank you. The burning question in my church's stewardship committee this year is, what in the world does our church's wider mission pay for? And I've had trouble answering that question. It looks to me from this chart, this slide, like our church's wider, or one of the previous slides, that our church's wider mission is just part of the New Hampshire Conference and the UCC national setting budget, and that it doesn't go for designated kind of costs as compared to the fellowship dues. But maybe that's wrong. Can you help me distinguish between those two income sources and how they're used?
So Gordon, if you can help me out with this too. So our church's wider mission, some of it does go to designated missions. Am I correct in that?
Not really, no.
Okay.
The big distinction, the big distinction between our church's wider mission and fellowship dues, both has to do with focus and with what happens with it when it's collected. So our church's wider mission is mission to support both the New Hampshire Conference and the national setting. As you heard, once we receive that, that gets divided 75% stays with us, 25% goes to the national setting. That is essentially the only piece of our revenue that gets divided between the conference and the national setting. So things like fellowship dues all goes to this work. Things like Friends of the Conference Appeal all stays with the conference. When I talk about fellowship dues, the way I tend to talk about it is fellowship dues are collected through our associations. They, in my mind, generally is meant to support the work of associations. However, the conference provides a lot of the infrastructure stuff that allows our associations to work, such as staffing to make things happen, such as insurance that covers our associations for insurance. Those type of pieces the conference pays for on behalf of our associations. So our associations collect the money, a significant portion of which goes to the conference to help provide the stuff that supports associations.
But when my congregation asks what their OCWM pledge will purchase, this is looking like an infrastructure payment for the administration of the conference, which is fine with me. I love what you do. I think it's tremendously valuable, but it's not a designated fund that supports Justice and Witness Ministries or Horton Center, as opposed to the lights at the office or the salaries of the staff. Is that right? It's just
that is correct.
Mixed in with everything else.
Operating budget of the conference.
Okay.
So does it cover the work of our mission and ministry teams? Absolutely. But it also covers staffing. It covers insurance. It covers, things that are other sources of revenue don't have. We don't receive it and then subdivide it into categories with us. It covers the overall ministry of the conference. For our churches, it does provide services such as not only the things our ministries does, but it provides search and call services. It provides conflict resolution services. It is our board of directors members actually are making church visits. You can invite one to come out and talk with you all for a half hour about what happens with OCWM dollars. And they will talk about some of what churches receive for the OCWM dollars that are given. But as far as our budget, it just goes into the budget and we use it where we have to pay the bills.
Okay, so I don't have any trouble selling what the conference does. This is just not going to feel like a mission piece for our church alongside Habitat for Humanity or something else. I've got to find a different way to talk about it. So thank you for the explanation.
Perfect. Yeah, I would talk about it more in terms of covenant relationship than mission. Linda, did I take everything you were going to say?
That was great. Thank you. I mean, the only thing I would add is it's similar to the way a church does its own budget, and where the money that the church that stays collected by from their members and then stays in the church, it's spent in a similar way. It's spent also to keep the lights on and to run all the programs and to do everything the church does. Is that fair to say, Gordon?
Yeah, I think that's
Yeah, very similar.
Can I also point out, and correct me if I'm wrong, Gordon, but OCWM, the term OCWM has a wider implication. What you're seeing here is OCWM basic support. And there are some other components of OCWM, like some of the special collections that are taken throughout the year. So Kathy, I don't know what your congregation is referring to when they ask about OCWM, but this here is basic support. And the other things do go to specific missions, like Neighbors in Need and
yes. Thank you, Bruce. That's a
Blankets,
really
okay.
important distinction that I'm embarrassed that I missed. There are 5 parts to OCWM. There is OCWM basic support, which is what shows up in this budget, the piece that gets subdivided. And then there's the 4 special offerings of Neighbors in Need, One Great Hour, Sharing, the Christmas Fund, and Strengthen the Church. Those are all technically part of OCWM, and those things do go to particular ministries.
Do we have any other questions, or anyone want any other clarifications on anything? Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, my camera's off. That's to sort of save power. So I think I read in the summary of the last board meeting that the cell tower agreement is being renegotiated. Did I imagine that? And if so, I'm wondering if that has if there's a potential impact on the bottom line in terms of revenue sources one way or the other. And maybe you can't talk about specifics, but I was just curious about that.
I'll take that one. I can't talk about specifics yet. The cell tower agreement was last renegotiated in 2019, I believe, and we've been operating on that update to the original lease agreement. We have recently been offered several options for changing that, including a buyout of the lease or changes to the lease terms. We are currently negotiating that with American Tower Corporation. And we don't know what the impact is going to be because we don't know what we're going to come to as far as an agreement. So that could potentially have an impact in the future. Not on 2020, well, potentially on half of 2024, because the lease runs through April.
Mhm.
We're doing our best to keep that revenue where it is. And we're optimistic that we can be successful with that.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm. I'm sorry, I should have
We
introduced
gotta prove our
myself.
worth before any meeting.
I should have introduced myself. I didn't follow the standing rules. I'm Bruce Kinney, a member of the Congregational Church of Amherst and president of the board.
Thank you, Bruce. I totally forgot about keeping us doing that.
Yeah, me too. Any other questions, clarifications? Comments? Thaddeus.
Yes, sorry. Jumping into my other role as a delegate for my church, Thaddeus Huberding, Newfields Community Church. I am wondering if you could speak, I know you touched on it, if you could speak a tiny bit more about the additional support for Horton Center. I see that, right, we adopted in 2023 $6,760, but actually paid, oh, sorry, but are actually going to pay $39,600. And now we are projecting to pay $2,653. Can you speak on what happened this year? Because there was no COVID impact. What happened this year to change that that estimate so much? And then why are we estimating that not to be an issue next year with only estimating 2,000 something for additional support?
So part of what happens with that line is when we receive additional support, then we go and spend it on the things the additional support happens. So that number gets bigger and projected in actual because we've already received the money to go to particular projects. So that money is not coming from OCM, WM dollars or anything. That's coming from particular directed gifts. For example, this summer we built 3 new elements at Horton Center, a whale watch, a Gaga pit, a 9-square apparatus. Those all came from special donations to support that happening. We had other donations to come to help support our international staff. So when we receive those, you would see that also on the other side on special received donations as far as income. If you were looking at a full budget, that then goes also as expenses, and that's part of why it goes into that additional support line item. Also get any additional monies we get that we haven't budgeted for scholarships go into that additional support line item as an expense when we move the money around in our budget. So, but anything that's in there outside of what was approved for by the conference really should be money we've received, particularly like in 2023 when we haven't ended the year to know whether Horton Center ends in the black or the red. Could there be, could we need $2,000 more from the conference to cover things to make it all break even at the end? Yes, but we wouldn't even know that to project it yet. So anything in this projected category is in there because we've received the monies and then gone and spent.
Yeah, thanks for clearing that up.
And we like spending special monies we get.
Anyone else?
I have a stupid question. I'm sorry. This is
Go ahead, Sandra. I'm sure it's not stupid.
what is that service? Because in 2022 is 0, 2023 this is actually 0, and then the projected is 8,000 something, and then 2,000. So what is it? Again, I'm new to this, so I really want to know.
Can you take that one, Gordon, again?
I can, yes. So debt service, this is going to be a little bit of money on the line of credit we take to keep our income even during the year. We'll take some line of credit, we'll pay it off as the year goes, because we don't get all of our income in even installments all year long. But the majority of what you see there has to do with that sprinkler system repair that we did over the winter. We took 2 loans to cover the part that we did not receive donations for. One was from the Cornerstone Fund for a bit over $33,000 some odd. And then we took $25,000 loan from ourselves from our revolving loan fund. We now have to pay those back to the Cornerstone Fund and to ourselves. And that figure is the paying back of those loans.
Thank you.
And our hope is over 5 years that will be back down much closer to 0 again.
Any other questions, or did you want me to go back to any other slide? I think I'm going to stop the share again. I can bring it back up. And now that we can see what we did. At least now that I can see your faces, are there any other questions? And I can't see this chat when I'm screen sharing, so I'm also scrolling to the chat right now. I think we got all the questions that were in the chat.
Very good. Well, seeing no questions, I'm going to go into the what's next for our connecting sessions before we bid everybody a good night. We have 5 more connecting sessions after today. Half of our connecting sessions are before the annual meeting, half of them follow the annual meeting. This upcoming Thursday night, we have a chance for you to interact with our association capacity task force that has been working on behalf of our associations to re-envision the work of our associations. I'll let them explain the whys to that on Thursday night, but that is your chance to be in conversation with them. A week from tonight, next Tuesday night, you will have a chance to meet with our General Synod delegates to hear about all the happenings at General Synod 34. Then we jump to post the annual meeting. There will be 2 opportunities to have conversations about pretty much whatever topics you want to have conversations about with Sarah and myself. Those will take place on Sunday the 22nd. This is the only one that's at a different time. This one's late afternoon. That'll be at 4 o'clock, and then it'll take place that Thursday after annual meeting again at the 7 o'clock time. And finally, we believe you are going to enjoy interacting with our keynote speaker enough that we've arranged a special time to have follow-up conversation with Becca Anderson, our keynoter, and that will take place on Tuesday the 24th. We hope you consider joining us for all of those. If you haven't signed up for one and decide later on you want to sign up to make sure you receive the Zoom link, just let us know. We will get you onto that list. And with that, friends, I think we will bid you all a good night.
Night.
Thanks for coming, everyone.
Thank you, Linda.
job, Linda.
And recording.